So welcome to the latest edition of the Career Bites podcast with DYW, and today we have got Colin Downie from the WildHearts Group. So welcome, Colin.
How are you doing? Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So Colin, I understand that your role with WildHearts Group is as Sales and Partnership Director. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what your role involves?
Great. Well, look, the WildHearts Group, we do lots of different things, but I'm ultimately responsible for driving the income into the business. You know, how do we make money? How do we manage our customers? What we do with that profit is really important to us. The WildHearts Group in general is a social enterprise group of companies where we are selling products and services, ultimately to make money, but we reinvest all of that profit in our social impact programs. So the social element of our group is directly linked to why we have customers. Customers want to buy from us because of what we do with the profit, but we're very keen that the social impact output is maximised, and we've got a great schools programme right across the UK. We've got international interests in microfinance and helping women be more equal and get ready for the world of work. So we've got a very varied role with both income generation, responsible for all of our customers, our partners, our suppliers, and ultimately I've got a hand in our schools programme and the development of how we deliver that all across Scotland and the UK.
That's amazing, Colin. So thanks for that. And that's going to tee me up nicely for kind of where we want to take this podcast today, if that's okay with you. Because you've mentioned lots of things that the organisation's involved in, and it's absolutely intrinsically linked to what DYW are hoping to do. So obviously I'm aware of the schools programme, and there's obviously a team in the ground who we interact with on a quite regular basis. So can we maybe start with the schools programme first of all? Just tell us a little bit about how schools can get involved with WildHearts Group.
Well, if we take, maybe before we get to that point, giving a tiny bit of the history, where did we start and where did the schools programme sort of evolve out of, if you like. 20 years ago when we started WildHearts Group, we started a stationery business called WildHearts Office. We sell, fairly mundane things, pens, paper, toner cartridges. We now sell furniture, we do printing, we do PPE, we do all sorts of tech type products like screens and laptops, can sell these microphones. But it's a social enterprise, and what that means is ultimately that the business, every penny of the profit that we make, we wanted to reinvest into delivering programs that benefited people. And we didn't necessarily have a kind of easy way to define that 20 years ago, but we're always keen that we felt like the group could stand for something greater than just the products and services that it sells.
Absolutely.
You see on the screen here, the strapline, business for good. Yeah. Everything we do at the group is centred around the idea that business can be a significant force for social and economic change. Yeah. And we have seen that since we started the company. So everybody buys pens and paper, whether they're a small business or they're a sole trader in their bedrooms or they are a multinational company. You will recognise the brands of many companies who buy their products from us. But to be fair to lots of business, and business often gets a bad rap in the papers and in the press, there are lots of companies who want to do really good things, and they do lots of good things, whether they're known for that or not. So our argument was always, if we could sell you the same products, the same price, with the same delivery and the same quality that you get from other suppliers, but we'll use all the profit and deliver that into social projects, so almost like donate it to charity, if you like, for an easy to understand strapline, well, why would you not buy from us? And that is how we started the business sort of 20 years ago in Glasgow. And we've become a multi-million, multinational business and group of companies with social impact all across the world as a result. So the driving force was ultimately, what could we do with that profit? And Mick Jackson, who's the founder and CEO, used to be linked with the Princess Trust, used to be a director, Young Enterprise, other sort of elements of organisations that supported entrepreneurial thinking and behaviour. Yeah. And he was always very passionate about young people having the skills to be able to feel like they could change the circumstances with which they found themselves in. And I am ultimately a product of the community, with opportunities that I've had over the years as I grew up through school, which, again, I look back on very fondly, where organisations in my community gave me support, gave me exposure in outdoor education, gave me exposure in leadership courses that helped me think there was a world beyond the community with which I worked in. But not everybody who's in a particular community has the resources, has the aspiration, doesn't always have the knowledge, and often doesn't have the networks to be able to transcend the communities that they live in and work. Yeah. So we were always looking to try and connect with that type of outcome, giving young people the skills that could make them think differently, think entrepreneurially. And when we talk about entrepreneurially in that context, it's not always about starting your own business. And
sometimes it's just reinvesting for your local community, a do-good project to get behind.
Yes, and sort of using that sort of interaction in whatever that program is to think you can build on that. You can change the circumstances for other people. Yeah. You can learn new skills. Quite often I look back on certain role models that I met across my school career who I wasn't personally connected to from a family perspective, but something about them made me think they acted differently. I could aspire to something like that. And then when you develop some of those skills, you get a bit of confidence that you can practice that skill again. You can develop it. It might be leadership. It might be simply confidence. It might be achieving something, whatever that achievement is, and feeling actually, I could try that again in a different context. I could develop that. I can network. You realise that by speaking to people, being exposed to people,
builds your confidence in that area that you can use in your working life.
Correct, and it tends to open doors. The more you talk to people about who you are and what you want to achieve, you'd be amazed how many people are out there to help you. And if I go back to when we started WildHearts Office, we're not particularly religious, but the idea of sort of seek and ye shall find, from a religious context, it's amazing how many people we spoke to who wanted to help us when we didn't necessarily know what a social business was.
Was that the early stages of this?
Very early stages, and we were kind of, well, have you spoken to these people? Do you know that this organisation would do something similar? And we just went on a journey. And the more that we went on that journey, we asked questions. I think the more authentic we were, the more believable we were, the more success we had, it just bred more and more opportunities. Yeah. And we have now, last year in the schools programme, we reached over 150,000 student engagements across the entirety of the programme in 1 year, when it literally started with no customers, no impact, dare I say it, no clue. But again, people like DYW in our early years, in South Lanarkshire, a couple of teachers in South Lanarkshire who kind of believed in what Mick was trying to achieve, gave him the opportunity to try a pilot programme in schools, and it was a phenomenal success.
And that's the testing point that gives you the feedback, that gets you the things that what works and what doesn't, and finds out what young people are looking for as well.
Definitely. And look, it's probably right to be talking about in its early stages. So Mick is an entrepreneur, sort of serial entrepreneur, lots of stuff has been successful. And we started a program at the time, before it was the wider schools program, we had this element of a challenge which still exists to this day called Micro-Tyco, and that was short for Micro-Tycoon. And the idea was we would lend schools and participating schools £1, and they had a month to turn that £1 into as much money as possible any way they wanted. There was only a couple
Providing
of rules.
It's legal.
Yeah, that was it. Make sure it's legal. No stealing. To be able to create the resources. But it was fairly loose, but there was a kind of stepped program of ideas to think about. What do entrepreneurs think about? How do you look at the resources that are around you? What can you beg and borrow to help you make money? Reinvest money, take some profit, buy some things if it was raffle tickets, getting people to sponsor you. It's amazing what those kids would come up with in terms of their ideas. And quite frankly, we were astounded that a month later, we thought, if the pound came back as £10 or £100, the programme would have done its job. And then there was results coming in, £400, £800, £2,000, £4,000. To this day, there was a school 3 years after we started the programme in Aberdeen who raised £14,500 in a month.
Which is amazing.
Engaging with their communities and coming up with ideas and reinvesting money. And what the programme was there to do was to, foster, participants were off in teams of 5. So it was all about networking, having the confidence to go and, knock some doors, send some emails. Yep. What is the business idea, whether it was running raffles, there was kids in Aberdeen taking trolleys into businesses, running little nail clinics for the women, whilst the boys, were polishing shoes, getting people who they've never met before to come to a meeting room inside a business and charging £2 time to get your shoes polished on a Thursday lunchtime. All supported by the teachers and ultimately this broader concept of making money.
For a do-good project in a local community.
And every penny of that money was reinvested in the WildHearts Foundation, either back in the schools programme or in some of our global gender equality work as well. So it started as an idea, but has become this significant sort of foundational program. You got young kids feeling like they can make a difference in the communities. And obviously Micro-Tyco has become a much wider community-based program that, mirrors the academic year. There's lots of elements around career employability, CV writing, sustainability, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There's lots of different ways we engage. We're going to get into that today. But it started with a simple idea with a couple of teachers in South Lanarkshire who believed in us and felt like there was definitely a market for young people needing entrepreneurial education, which
and learn the skills
is ultimately about essential skills, soft skills, leadership, confidence, dynamism, helping them become more ready for the world of work. And that today is the founding principle of the schools program, to help kids see that there is, there's multiple pathways to success. Not everybody does it specifically during their academic qualifications.
Absolutely.
And more these days, employers are looking for essential skills and soft skills, as it used to be called.
I mean, you've touched
really
on a few things like just networking and banging on doors and that interaction that's gives someone the confidence that perhaps not everyone's getting that opportunity through the education system. But that programme that you mentioned is obviously touching on so many of those soft skills that once they get a little bit of confidence in a couple of areas, they can take it anywhere in their life as well.
Yeah, over the years, when you've watched some of the kids coming to our in-person hubs, or they've been engaged in some of the pitches that they're doing, because Micro-Tyco inside the schools program, the academic year, is a competition. It gets very hot in terms of people competing against each other. But when you see the pitches of kids who are standing on stage in some of our corporate partners, or the City Chambers in Glasgow, and the forthcoming summit is going to be at Glasgow College. There are nerves, but they have practiced their pitches, they've worked in teams, they share the workload as they get up there. They're standing in front of corporate directors, some of our corporate partners, often in front of the school's team, or even Mick and myself, who are ultimately judging, how good their idea is, what is the issue in their community that they've addressed. There's been some wonderful examples.
Sustainable?
Is it sustainable? Can they actually turn it into a business? Then they might have to field some questions and answer some questions from the people who are judging them. And that in itself is a big deal. And there are opportunities in school to do that, but there aren't as many, arguably as employers are looking for in that sense. And, with all due respect to how important the education system is, there hasn't been the same focus on soft skills and essential skills over the last 10 years as there possibly has been around, STEM subjects or academic qualifications. And
because the focus really for school is all on attainment and getting that qualification. But what comes with the qualification is actually the skills of confidence, interaction, communication, leadership, all the things that the programme's obviously promoting.
Yeah, and attainment's a good word there. The attainment gap is often makes the headlines, from governments of the last sort of 15 years, the talk of the attainment gap getting wider. And there's a lot of research that backs that up, that young people, particularly in lower income communities, aren't reaching the level of academic attainment that their more affluent peers are. But actually there's no one way into the world of work, and actually often with less of a focus on academia for the ones who are not particularly academic, or even, that always, when you use labels like that, it feels like you're bracketing young people, and that's unfair. If you've got improved confidence, you can feel that actually I can go and make something happen just by knocking a door or sending an email, and being comfortable with an element of failure or rejection, is just part and part of life, actually. I've heard a really good phrase not too long ago, failure is just, you're actually learning how to be successful as things change. And it's easy to say it, but you've only got to I sort of see failure just as more little bumps in the road, rather than actually, failure is rarely the end of the road.
The path, to get there.
Yeah, so you can practice these things, practicing how you just, okay, right, great, I can learn from that. Do I just need to tweak something? Do I just need to change my approach slightly? And actually, you know, it's interesting. When you're involved in sales, again, I read a good sales book. 80% of sales happen usually at the third or fourth time of asking. 80% of people will never ask for something more than twice.
Yeah.
So often just being prepared, okay, that's a
prepared to fail.
No, just, okay, I'm going to ask again and again. And actually the third and fourth time you ask something, well, there's that really young, confident person again asking me, how do I get into the world of work? Or how do I open this door? Do you know what? I'm going to help them open that door because they keep asking me and they're doing it really politely. So I do like the phrase being politely tenacious.
Yeah.
You know, it's often just a way of, and that just for anybody who doesn't know the word tenacious, just keep asking politely. The same thing often will start opening doors, and it's one of the key skill sets that we want to teach young people, that you can almost do anything, you know, if you just keep trying, but refining the way that you approach things. And a lot of our schools program is there. I think there's 32 different skill sets that are taught in our program, but crucially, there is an accreditation as part of our program called Skills Builder. It's a UK recognised accreditation, and it has 8 major topics. You know, one of them being confidence, one of them being, you know, leadership. You know, teaching essential skills that employers are looking for. And in this modern world where soft skills and essential skills are actually as important. They're almost as important as academic qualifications, unless you're going to go on to a specific subject at university. Yeah. Lots of the big employers in Scotland who are looking for apprentices and apprenticeship delivery are looking for essential skills more than they are academic qualifications. So they will look at that as importantly as exams. And if you've got a way to showcase you've been involved in programs like ours and you can showcase an essential skills certification, you can often go straight to interview.
So we kind of started off that discussion and we've covered loads in that initial part, but this enterprise element of the organisation, almost that do good project, kind of how I guess the business or the organisation started, is a lot of the elements of what we're essentially allowing young people to showcase and learn that skill, which then can be passed on and learn how they can do more good in their community. So obviously you mentioned that business for good, which is part of your strapline, but that's fundamentally what entrepreneurship is all about. It's about that reinvestment and that do good to help the wider community or the general public to get on better, and that's fundamentally why you exist, I guess.
Yeah, and it's a good point. There's lots of ways of doing business, and I think when people talk of entrepreneurs and they will look at some of the classic household names in Scotland, it's often showcased as being wealthy. Yeah. You know, like it's centred around the success is directly related to money. Now, money is really important. Money fixes a lot of the world's problems. Yeah. Money opens all sorts of doors, but equally, not everybody is going to be, you know, it's a tiny, tiny proportion of people who will be successful and characterised around major monetary making, if you like. But we have a wider view on that in the sense that business is everywhere. You know, the majority of businesses in the UK are what's known as SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises. 99% of the business in the UK are small and medium-sized enterprises that employ people, you know, regionally, locally, central belt, or, you know, nationally in that sense. So to be successful, you know, can be defined by people in many different ways, but, you know, can be like, you know, how do you manage your relationships in your family? Are you respected in the communities with which you work? And with our business, we are always looking to try and drive our profit, not for individual wealth management, but to showcase that business can deliver income,
but be there for the greater good as well.
But be there for the wider community as well. Yeah. So every penny of our profit is reinvested in our social programs. So at the school level, our participation in our program is free. It's entirely free for everybody in the communities that we work with. But it's only free because the other side of our business is successful, and we've got profit that we can invest in it. But those two things are inextricably linked. Yeah. We are a group of businesses that people buy from us because of what we do with the profit. Yeah. So if we didn't do that, they might just stick with their current supplier. Yeah. But the more I would say going back 10 years, essential skill development in Scotland and in the UK isn't funded. Yep. It's external organisations that provide the funding. Sometimes that funding comes from the government, or it comes from participation in our programme. So we're really passionate about putting those two things together. There's lots of different ways of doing business. Our way of doing business isn't necessarily better than others who are in it to make money and to make money for themselves, because it's really important that money is made, because that's where the government gets their taxes. Yeah. That's what creates the jobs for young people to come through. But if you can put those two things together, I'm really passionate about that you can have these two things coexisting. We're not the only social enterprise in the UK or the world that is doing that type of thing. So we are part of a movement of businesses that want to reinvest their profit in whatever their social program is, whether that's helping people who are far from the labour market because they've got mental health challenges, or they've got physical challenges, or they've been in prison and need a bit of extra support to get back into the world of work. There are a lot of businesses that are trying to deliver a social outcome whilst they're selling their products and services. And it's no better, or it's better in some, depending on how you judge, I suppose, your moral standpoint, whether you want to be delivering against that or not. We are just really passionate about us selling those products and services so that we can expand the schools programme, reach more young people, have it in more schools and upskill them, because the world of employment is changing. It's changing fast, and as I mentioned before, the focus on academia is becoming less important. So. It's very important in certain career pathways, but young people need these days to have this essential skill set in their toolkit, whether they are coming from backgrounds of low-income communities or not. They need to be confident. They need to feel they can open their own doors. They need to feel like they've got a network of people they can go and speak to, confide in, ask for favours. Also, I think the world's full of resources, and resources can be intellectual, they can be physical, and it's amazing what you can turn resources into in terms of success. So you want people to feel like they've got resources,
in something,
and they've got resources around them that they can turn into something new. So what could I ask a favour for? What could I borrow in order to help me do something? And that could be an idea, steal an idea, and develop it for your own purposes. Or could I borrow a physical asset to help me do something with that asset, create a new opportunity from that asset, and then give that asset back to somebody? So we try and teach a lot of that within the programme, that it's okay to ask. How do you de-risk things? How do you think ahead? Like, what could go wrong in this process of this programme that we're delivering? Where might I be able to create a safe test environment, for my little idea in my community? And we'll come on to, I think, we'll come on to some of those examples that we've taught in the programme. But giving people that confidence to try to get something a little bit wrong, but just to tweak it. You might have to tweak it 3 or 4 times, but at some point, that idea will, it's like a key in a lock. You'll get the combination right, and the idea will work, and it will fly. Open doors, and the confidence and ability to change the way you approach elements of your life will be determined as a result of that success.
So I think that's why it's really important for us to kind of like tell all of our schools and the listeners that are going to tune into this podcast how they can get behind this schools programme. So we know that you're already in some of our schools, and that's great, but we want to raise the awareness and do more of that. So if I'm either an educator, an influencer, someone that's going to be listening, how can they get involved in the schools programme? How can they get it in their school and do more so that their young people are starting to get some of these kind of soft skills and educational benefits that can open doors? How do they get involved?
I think the important thing to say, that the schools programme is free. Okay, so ultimately it does require time. And it requires somebody to lead the programme. So we've got a network of brilliant teachers, and those teachers aren't doing a particular subject. We've got primary schools involved in the schools programme, and we've got teachers doing geography, modern study, maths, whoever's passionate about.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to just be from business or anything
absolutely
like that.
Absolutely not. And because not every school will teach business as a subject. Not every school will teach modern studies as a subject, for example. So it doesn't really matter. It just is a teacher that can see the ability to give young people essential skills outside of the curriculum. It's important to say that the programme is endorsed by Education Scotland. It's available, as a resource to any school that wants to get involved. You can go to our website, which is www.wildheartsgroup.com/schools. Mm-hmm. You can create an inquiry. We get inquiries every week. How do I get involved in your programme? We have, it follows the academic curriculum. There's lots of different touch points throughout the year. We do career carousels.
In terms of check-ins for the schools or the young people?
Well, there's both. So we've got a schools team. We've got, ultimately we've got people in our group whose entire responsibility is the development and running of the schools program. Engagement. Absolutely. So they will help on board schools. There is a series of lesson plans. So the key thing is teachers don't have to produce anything themselves.
They can pick up a lesson plan that's
absolutely
already there.
It's like a 15-week in the region of 3 months of lesson plans. It's all scripted. They just need to put a little bit of time delivering it.
So that's worth exploring just before we go. So 3 months or 15 weeks. Do you know how many physical hours that might be invested within that sort of 3 month period, or is it just determine what project a school would get involved in?
So really good questions. Let's take that back. I suppose the old adage of the more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it, right? But you're probably looking across a 3 month period, 10 to 15 hours in the region of that. But it can be built inside, the lessons can be built into many different subjects. As I said, there's elements of maths, English, team building exercise, letter writing exercise. There's a geographical element to it. Fundamental to the Micro-Tyco Challenge is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Yep. You might have heard of those. They're often known as the UN SDGs, for short, which is 16 sort of subcategories of, I suppose, the way that United Nations categorise the world's most serious problems. Yeah. And it's a wonderful framework for, in a common language for people to understand, right, the world's a big place. It does have some challenges, and it distills those challenges around poverty, around, good work, peace and justice, life below land, life above water. There's lots of ways you can consider the world's issues. Lots of subcategories about how those bigger picture issues are defined. Try and support them, and then key tools of what might be relevant to, Jane and Jack in a particular community thinking, I've got an issue here. It might be the local pond's polluted. It might be there's lots of litter. It might be a community that has had lots of refugees, involved with language, English in their first language. There's a lot of integration things that, challenges that schools have. So across the academic year, which is ultimately, across 10 months, give or take some school holidays. We've got different touch points throughout the programme. Schools don't have to be engaged with the whole academic programme throughout the year. There's the Micro-Tyco challenge itself, which is a global challenge. We're looking for the best ideas centred around.
So not just focused on the UK, but
no, we've got schools across Europe. We've had schools last year from Australia and North America participating who downloaded the content and sent in their pitches. That's the wonderful word about digital technology these days.
Because you can do it across an online platform.
Absolutely, you can reach it and kids can be engaged. So if you take the first part, here we are, sort of schools have gone back. They're now settling into, we're getting more and more inquiries all the time about what's happening in the schools programme. So we've got a big focus on, if you heard of COP, which is, COP was here in Glasgow in 2026.
Absolutely. And I think both our organisations were involved in that in some capacity about raising awareness.
Absolutely. That's a massive event with some of the world's, most prominent leaders, political leaders, again, from America and all across the European continent coming to Glasgow to discuss sustainable strategies to make the world, sort of work in a more sustainable way, looking at climate elements and climate change. And the UN SDGs are actually sort of paramount to the context with which those political parties are looking to try and make agreements around things like net zero, sustainable outcomes, sustainability for businesses, and how do we make the climate issues that we are facing, how do we address it?
I think even for us, though, it's one of the legacy projects that we get out of COP as well, because DYW have got like a Climate Hero legacy project that's really for businesses and organisations, mentors to get involved locally with schools that are trying to do good. And if they can do that good under the umbrella of a schools programme for WildHearts, then, you know, even better, because that's something that obviously we want to continue happening. So COP26 was probably, just over 3 years ago now.
Yep.
And that's still working. In fact, from our original 3 DYWs that were involved in the process near to Glasgow, it's now extended across all 20 DYW regions as well. So lots more to get involved in. And that's again one of the reasons that we wanted to get you here today, was can we keep banging that drum? Can we get more schools involved? Can we do more under that umbrella of do good, so that we're all hitting our sustainable development goals?
Yeah. So the big focus between now that your schools are back and the run up to COP, which is essentially towards the end of November, is the programme teaches the framework of the SDGs in schools. So in the just after Christmas, between sort of January and March, we run the Micro-Tyco competition, which is focused around the SDGs, but we spend the next 2-3 months building up to that competition. If schools want to participate in the competition, they don't have to. But there's a big build-up where we are teaching what are the SDGs, what are the world's most pressing problems, distilled into 16 broad areas. And what do those SDGs mean to young people and the teachers who are running the programme in their communities? And, you know, we had a brilliant pitch last year, which was a school in Glasgow who was fighting with the other school, you know, across the road.
Friendly competition.
Friendly competition, but it was, let's say, there was conflict.
Yeah.
You know, before, you know, during school and after school, you know, kids not agreeing with each other on whatever their subject, you know, was in dispute. One of the SDGs is around peace and justice and stable communities. So you can teach those schools, and the young pupils were keen to try and address this conflict, you know, at the local parks and try and find a resolution. So they learn about the SDGs, that wider concept of peace and justice, but there's tens of subcategories about what does peace and justice mean. The rule of law, the institutions with which we govern by, and fairness and justice, and why we have a prison system, and what are morally. What's the baseline for morals? So they used that framework to look at conflict resolution. And the ultimate point was, as they were building up to that, they came up with a way to engage those schools around conflict dissolution. You know, could we talk to the local school about what our issues are? Why do we have these issues? What can we do to address them? And the ultimate point was using that framework, using our methodology, which is a sort of 15-week lesson plan methodology, to sort of think, how do you de-risk it? What could be the problems of engaging? You look, well, kids fighting in the park, how do we change it? And those communities became much more harmonised because of our programme, and actually much less conflict, much less fighting, and the schools ended up with partnerships and doing lots of things together.
So they've understood their common goals and values that make them intrinsically linked. Saw
themselves a bit more equal, you know, under the context of trying to work through some of the programs. So the program can be applied in so many different ways. So when we talk back that essential skills and entrepreneurialism, it's being entrepreneurial about how do we resolve our two schools in this community fighting with each other. Do we really have these major differences? Is it all in our heads? How can we work towards, you know, the resolution of it? And that is great that you can take kids on that pathway, because for the rest of their lives, they will then realise that they can make a difference in the communities, you know, and that was their SDG. That was the one they picked because that was the problem in their community that they wanted to address. So COP26 gave us this reason to kind of focus the schools programme around the SDGs, and kids can choose, you know, everybody's aware of climate issues, you know, and what can they do in their local community. I was a mentor in my son's school in Renfrewshire last year, where the kids, you know, had an issue down at the local loch, you know, with pollution, litter picking, a lack of signage, a lack of bins, you know, for litter. And ultimately they raised money from the local community, got permission from the council to install literal bins. There was problems with swans and ducks, you know, shouldn't be fed. There was no signs up to say they shouldn't be fed bread and other things. And it was
because it's effectively not good for them. So that's an educational thing in itself.
You know, but it was, you know, kids were finding, you know, ultimately, dead animals down by the loch when it was that loch was supposed to be clean. It was supposed to be where they were all going, paddleboarding and sailing and fishing, and it had an environmental impact to it. So their SDG was life underwater, learning about globally the problems with oceans and ocean acidification and the problems that then affects wildlife.
And then relating it back to their actual local community.
Yeah, the loch that's directly near the school, and the litter and the lack of signs and lack of ability. So they had different elements of it. How did they raise money? We've got budget plans, within it. How were they going to spend money? What did the signs cost? What did the bins cost? What were going to be the conflict groups? Why wasn't the council doing something? So they write emails to the council about why there wasn't funding for bins.
So again, it's raising a concern at government level, which should have been happening anyway, but actually school children are doing this.
Absolutely. It's primary sevens in that local community. And I just, often when you're in amongst it all, you're just astounded by the creativity. And we're obviously guiding them with a protocol to think of things. But when they're standing up in the class with their teacher and me, ultimately listening to their pitches, the thought that they'd gone into across multiple ideas. That wasn't, there was
the level of detail.
There was, 5 teams of 5 in the class, all with a different idea, pitching and letting the others hear their ideas and the things they'd done to de-risk it and mitigate some of the problems and foresee the problems. It's wonderful business training, essential skills training that they should take with them, into the world of work. Now that was a primary 7 group exposure going into secondary school with that bedrock of
transition
ability,
support ready for high school.
And we, when the kids come as a regional competition, they come to the national finals at the end of the academic year. Just in June there, we take the kids from all the winning regions in Scotland, Manchester, Birmingham, London, all go to the Houses of Parliament. And I was meeting kids with some wonderful ideas just there in June at the Houses of Parliament, getting all their certificates, getting their picture taken inside the home of our sort of UK government. There was kids from Birmingham who had never been on a train before, let alone they'd never been to London. Yeah, never been on a train before, and so that day out for them in London
is a huge experience.
The house is coming back to that point where I benefited from, at school, things that changed my outlook. You don't always know the impact it's going to make at that point, but meeting those kids at the House of Parliament, there's no doubt they went home that night absolutely buzzing about.
Yeah, because listen, you can be inspiring the next politicians that are there to do more good in communities, and that's like a fundamental, excellent experience that they can learn that they wouldn't have been getting otherwise.
Yeah, and I remember a couple of years ago there was, we don't discriminate who participates, but there was a young kid who was literally on his own, came up from Dumfries, with his teachers, and he clearly had a challenging background, at home. His home life, must have been difficult, and he wasn't particularly confident. But his idea was just amazing. But what it took for him to get on the stage and
confidence to do that.
Yeah, but he wasn't overly confident was the point. But he was encouraged to do it. He struggled at times, but he got through it. And eventually he won because there was other people on the stage who were very polished, very eloquent in the way they delivered their pitch. Yeah. They were from a school with a different background who practiced some of those things. But ultimately their idea wasn't quite as good. So on balance, the judges
believed in the idea.
He believed in the idea, but what he had overcome to be able to deliver that on the day was worthy of him winning. And again, another example of just giving kids the right environment to do their best without judgment, but also listening to their ideas and things they thought of can go. You don't always know what it's going to do, but there's no doubt that with the amount of young kids who are coming through the programme and some of the ideas that they're coming up with, that it is having incredible impact. So, there's lots of ways. We do career carousels, we do CV writing workshops. We have several corporate partners, sort of BNP Paribas, Zurich, Clyde & Co, Wesleyan, Siemens, like companies that and Nestle, for example, that some people will be aware of.
Yeah.
And they are doing all sorts of things in their workplace that are sustainable and trying to be better companies, where we want to expose young people to these businesses. They can learn How can they get into these companies? What are these types of companies looking for in young people? Is it degrees? Is it apprenticeships?
Or is it behaviours?
Is it behaviours? Is it essential skills? Is it entry-level jobs? It is mostly the key thing first and foremost. Academic qualifications are important for certain companies and not so much for others. But also I think for young people to learn business in the papers and the press is often
portrayed a different way.
It's not portrayed, but we're all human, you know. I think most people in the world are good. You just have to give people a credible way to express it often. Yeah. And businesses, they're just full of humans trying to do their best. There are very few bad companies out there. There's always bad actors, of course. But when kids learn the amazing efforts that Nestle, for example, will go to make sure that the milk's produced for their chocolate. They've got a big factory down in Girvan. Yeah. Every manufacturing plant globally for Nestle that makes chocolate, their milk comes from a maximum distance of 50 miles away from that manufacturing plant. So all the farms around
their sustainable
plant,
goals.
So the milk's not trying. Yeah. They're really keen to pay their farmers well. Nestle were the first company 5 years ago, when you get all your Christmas chocolates, you get the plastic tins of chocolate, whatever. Last year was the first year they eradicated plastic wrapping.
Packaging, yeah.
And they're still the only company that does the Christmas sweets in paper wrapping. But kids will learn through the programme that was a decision that it was 5 years in the making. So the board had signed off, right, we need to move away from single-use plastics. Everybody became aware of microplastic issues, and there's probably lots of kids these days that just are well aware of that now. But it's a difficult problem for and no one company can fix it. And again,
everyone's got to do their bit.
Everybody's got to do their bit. But they made that decision 5 years ago. But it takes 5 years for the supply chain of forward thinking for it. It cost them money, and ultimately they will it wasn't about market share, it was about doing the right thing, but they want to encourage all the other companies who make
to do the same thing,
and to, if Nestle can do it, they're not looking for prizes for that, they're just looking to make a difference around sustainability. And so in the run-up to COP, and we've got on November the 13th this year, 2025, we've got our in-person hub at Glasgow College. There's workshops run by our corporate partners. So, Nestle will talk about this stuff, and kids will go into teams all around tables, and they'll be given tasks and workshops by Nestle. If you were to design cereal packets, how would you do it? What would the imagery be? What would the messaging be? What would the materials be made? Is it recycled cardboard? Where do you get the recycled cardboard from? Is it more expensive than, virgin cardboard? And it will astound those kids in terms of the thought that goes into producing packaging in a sustainable way, paying farmers well, because ultimately if you're making chocolate, it's not just milk. Where do you get your cocoa from? Cocoa can only grow in the tropical regions of the world.
So it's sourced from countries far away from the UK.
Absolutely. So again, there's a climate element to that you can't avoid, but how do you mitigate that in other ways? Sometimes some of the best cocoa is grown in countries where governments aren't as democratic as the ones that we live in. So there are challenges with that. There are other partners like BNP Paribas, a global investment bank. based in France, who want to invest in countries where they've got stances that they'll take that they won't invest in countries where there's a lot of bribery, for example. They might not invest in countries where a human rights record is not as good. It's not as good as not only it should be, let alone compared to the more fairer world that we live in here in the UK. So exposing young people to, again, around this framework of the SDGs, climate changes, community impact, that business can stand for something greater than the products and services that it's selling, and teach young kids along the way that there are lots of businesses doing good in the communities with which they work and they operate. The world's a complicated place. There's not single answers to all of these global issues, but can they think differently and learn skills along the way that they can then apply to their own behaviours and learning? So that's kind of the first half of the schools programme.
Yeah. So I think it's just worth summarising that, just so that if there's teachers or young people still listen to that they've obviously got time to sign up for this. So
definitely.
This is City of Glasgow College, the City campus, on November the 13th. And what I understand, there is at least between 120 young people and a selection of up to maybe 20 schools that can get involved in this process. Now, there's probably some schools that you guys are working with all of the time signed up for that. But for us, we're here to influence absolutely some of our schools to get involved, get behind us, join the Global Youth Summit on the 13th of November.
Yeah, so that's a day event where young people, ultimately first come, first served to a degree, but all of our content is downloadable for schools that sign up. So whether you can make it to Glasgow, there's schools will come from Edinburgh, the Central Belt. The ones who are engaged in the programme will want to find a way to be there in person. There are physical workshops around the tables.
So this is with partners getting involved?
This is with corporate partners. So I mentioned people like Zurich, BNP Paribas, Nestle, Clyde & Co, Wesley, and some of these companies you'll have heard of, others that you won't, will have their people, volunteers from their staff coming to be mentors on the day to talk through the programme, listen to the kids' ideas on the day, set them challenges, a little bit like, as I say, I mentioned one from Nestle last year around sustainable packaging. It gives these businesses a way to showcase what they do in the communities within which they work, how passionate they are about being as sustainable as possible. So there's a big sort of sustainability element to the conversation. There's an element of visibility as well for the young people, so that they can see how, can I aspire to go and work for a business like that?
Like Nestle or whoever.
Or whoever. They all have apprenticeship programs often. They have entry-level jobs. They have graduate programs, depending on what that young kid's aspirations are.
So from a young person viewpoint, it suddenly makes some of these roles for these global businesses almost perceive more obtainable. Like,
absolutely,
give them a pathway where they can actually see themselves working in some of these organisations.
Absolutely, there's no what it will often showcase is that the people who are working in these businesses are no different to them at school. They had to find their way, their path. It's not always about a degree or an apprenticeship. These things help in certain contexts, but anybody can carve their own path and will find themselves working towards developing those skills, the confidence, the dynamism. That should never change. You're often needing to keep developing that throughout your entire career. Nobody parachutes into a senior position in any business without years and years and years of work and trying to apply and develop and getting better at various things. Again, if you can instill the behaviour of learning skills at an early age, it's amazing how kids can build on that. So I think it humanises that world of work. It will also showcase what it takes to get into that type of business. So there might be a young kid there who's got an aspiration to be a lawyer. So if they're involved in, Clyde & Co, or a law firm, a global law firm, and they're there talking about peace and justice in institutions, or they might have a particular focus on a different SDG. You think, actually, I could get into the world. There's lots of jobs in there. It's not necessarily about being a lawyer.
Impact. Yeah.
You could be a paralegal, you can be a secretary, you can be involved in facilities. What's facilities? Well, it's the backbone of running offices. Who changes the light bulbs, who delivers the mail, who makes sure there's teas and coffees in all the meeting rooms. These jobs are important and can't be done by robots in the future. Young kids can see that the world of work is quite open to them, and it's not always what is showcased to them in school, because there's a limited time in school to talk about the world of work. So yes, the Global Youth Summit is one of our biggest in-person opportunities for young people to come along, meet other businesses, meet other schools who are involved in the programme, develop their skills in the day, but equally they can build up to that November the 13th day with our lesson plans and our programme and content of learning.
And it brings it all together.
Brings it all together physically on the day. And if you can't be there physically on the day, as I said before, all of our resources are downloadable. You don't have to follow the whole programme, but a teacher, it's crucial to mention that it's accredited for CPD credits. So any teacher that takes on the Micro-Tyco Challenge will be able to use the programme for their CPD credits. And young people will come out of it if they complete either that first section up to Christmas, or they run the Micro-Tyco Challenge, which is January to March, where they are actually coming up with a business idea to address an issue in their community. If they do that January to March element of the programme, they can come out with it with skills builders accreditations that instantly becomes a recognisable skill set they can put on their CV and talk about in interviews, or talk about it with employers who will recognise that skill set.
So that's something that's worth reinforcing. There's 20 DYWs that cover the whole of Scotland, and that's every single local authority area from right the way up to the north, right the way down to Dumfries and Galloway, for example. So if a school or a teacher or a young person wants to get involved, they don't actually have to be there on the 13th. All of this stuff is available on the website, which is obviously we will make sure that we share and keep banging the drum. But that's an opportunity to all of a sudden start to get involved in this programme for good.
Absolutely. And you can be involved with it as much as you want. If I said there are schools who may only take elements of the lesson plans because they think that's what will complement the subject that they are teaching at that time. That's great. We do want those teachers who are who can sort of get kids to Glasgow College. It's not just about the workshops, but we've also got a marketplace event. So we've got other organisations who are going to showcase how they support young people and the wider route into employment. So Police Scotland, for example, are going to be there and talking about their community development programs, engagement programs, not just for the world of work, but also the community support they have if young kids are having challenges that feel that the police could have an intervention or more impact. They will find that the police are fairly human as well. We've got Bernardo's there on the day. All of our corporate partners will have stands and discussions about what they're looking for in the world of work. If it's a CV they need to focus on, if it's STEM subjects, for example, that an employer one in Scottish Power, for example, and British Gas, will often look for engineering type subjects, or might look for a baseline in maths and English or something. And that might not be right for everybody, but it does give kids those early options of kind of knowing whether that employer is going to be the right destination for them or whether they need to focus on a different skill set. But if they learn how to build and manage their CVs, it should hopefully give them another touch point to guide them towards a route into employment.
And I think that's also worth touching on some of the groups of young people or some things that are happening already in schools that this might appeal to as well, because I know firsthand that we've got a number of schools that have their own eco group. They have a sustainability group, and all of a sudden this is something else that this group can get behind as well, and then start to then influence the teachers to then pick this up and make it part of the curriculum. Because just to stress again something that you touched on before, 15 hours of investment during a school curriculum time doesn't feel like that much time to obviously influence what can happen there, but all of a sudden we can get more and more schools involved in this process to do more good on the back of it.
And it's probably important to say, 15 isn't a set amount of time, and ultimately that's an hour a week across 3 months.
Allows you to quantify something though and say, well, what lesson plan could that fit into? What subjects could it touch? Because you did touch on it touches multiple subjects. But for one particular teacher maybe picking it up, that's thinking, how do I develop that?
Yeah, and look, to pick up on a word there, sustainability can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And you can have sustainable money flows. Sustainability often can be about climate issues. Is it about oil and transport? Is it about reusing resources? Is it about a circular economy? So if there is an eco group or a sustainability group, where our programme will come and support that is how to think entrepreneurially around the issue at heart, whatever that is in the context of sustainability. And sustainability means different things to our corporate partners, of course. It means different things to Nestle. So from their perspective, it can be about milk and paying farmers well and the journey of products into manufacturing. Siemens, big technology manufacturer, have got lots of focus on tech products and AI and the ultimately issues with the plastics that are required to build their products and services globally. So it's difficult to get the balance with all of these things, but hopefully the framework within the schools programme allows young people and their teachers to kind of distill some of these bigger problems and actually think, what can I do to make a difference to the thing that matters to me in my community. I can give you a really good example. There's a school in Glasgow who, were aware of bee populations changing and declining because, ultimately in their research, it was linked to overuse of pesticides. So again, you're looking, right, is that an unsustainable way of farming? But we all need food. How are we going to tackle that? And then there can be an element of researching genetically modified food, why that, some people look at that positively. Yeah. Why do some people look at that negatively? But ultimately, again, through the framework of the SDGs, they learned all about that, food and food production, sustainable food production. And then what could they do in their community to address this? So started making money through the Micro-Tyco competition with a view to putting beehives in their school grounds to try and support the bee population. So they had to find a way to start making some money. The goal was to apiaries is the word for a beehive officially, and they now have made enough money through that program to have beehives which are monitored and what's the word? They're looked after by a local beekeeping association for free now. But that makes honey. They sell the honey.
The byproducts
that go with it. So those beehives paid for throughout the program, they worked out how to de-risk it all. They make money off of the honey, and then they can spend the money on doing up elements in their school and going on to the next project and the next project. So huge amount of learning, entrepreneurial behaviours.
Yeah. So I know that we've got 2 or 3 schools within our area alone that's done exactly what you've just said there. Right. So they've got their own beehives that then suddenly the schools, the young people are learning that this suddenly becomes a whole industry, because it's not just the honey. They made lip salves and balms and everything, candles. So that whole entrepreneurship, but the learning of how to care and look after the bees, which suddenly became a thing, because they were telling us some amazing stories that the first year they had the bees, the school was closed up over the summer, and this is when they were having to do a lot of the looking after.
Right, of course.
We were hearing stories of one of the teachers that were really feeling passionate about it, climbing the fence just to get in to look after the hives. But then we really felt passionately about what they were doing as well as a DYW region, and we started investing in another hive to allow them to grow. So all of a sudden, where they felt they were only going to get like a small harvest, maybe year 1 and year 2, has suddenly been huge, because they've got this whole entrepreneurship idea that's happening just through bees. So it's amazing to hear that other schools are actually seeing the benefit of that as well.
And that's, I suppose, the principles of how they got to that point are what we're trying to teach. So if you've got a methodology, you apply it to what is relevant to what the kid's passionate about. What do they see as something that is viable? So can they work towards producing beehives? How are they going to get to that point? Where are they going to make the money from? Yeah. So they've got to go on that process of developing the idea and the project. And ultimately, we will fund, WildHearts Foundation will fund the best ideas for the schools who want to take that idea and turn it into fruition. So it's not just about winning the competition. We do have a fund monetary pot where schools can apply
for that.
Yep. At the end of the program, if they come up with an idea that they can see is viable and can be invested in, we will support that and help them turn their ideas into reality. Because it's often to say that the reality and the delivery of the actual idea is the thing that makes young people fully appreciate that anything is achievable. You just have to be supported on the journey to
invest in that process
and make it. And investment's not always physical money. Yeah. It can be time, resources, education. What networks have you got all around you to help you deliver on that? And sometimes money is just the final end point that
can make it happen.
Can make it happen.
Yeah. So then just that's the Global Youth Summit.
Yep.
And you've mentioned again the Micro-Tyco challenge, which sits, I guess, within that school's academic year. What other programs are available then for schools to get involved or teachers to get involved?
So yeah, the Micro-Tyco Challenge is the actual development of ideas. So I suppose the first half of the year is building up to the workshops, learning about the UN SDGs, learning what our corporate partners think of sustainability, and also giving those young kids visibility of how you can get into the world of work.
Goals,
yep. Then just after Christmas, sort of between January and March, is the Micro-Tyco Challenge, the sort of the stepped program ultimately of other lesson plans where you're working every week on what's your idea in your community you want to develop. We also have a big focus on Green Careers Week. Yep. So more and more employers have careers that are focused on sustainability and greener outcomes for the worlds within which they operate in. We have a big focus on apprenticeship weeks. That's usually around the March, April time within a year. So
beginning of March for Scotland, obviously. National Apprenticeship Week is around about February time, so depending on what partner you are, you might be focusing on a different.
Yeah, that's right. Not every partner will have a focus on apprenticeships, but a significant amount do.
Well, yeah.
So, like, what does that company want to see in both an essential skills experience as well as academic achievement in order to apply and get into the world of apprenticeships? So there's a big focus on that. We do what we call career carousels, where there are partners coming together to kind of showcase outside of apprenticeships exactly what they're looking for in terms of maybe STEM qualifications, academic qualifications.
Because that's worth touching on as well, because round about every February time, young people have got such an important time for subject choices. And sometimes if they're inspired into careers in a particular area with partners, subject choices are a huge part of what can actually take them down the right path as well.
And that's a really good point. So there is a focus in around February, March, April time, making sure that anybody connected with the programme, again via the teachers or independently, the school kids with the right permission can be directly engaged with us as well, seeing what has inspired them. They might never know anything about a Nestle or a Wesleyan or a Siemens and think, that's what I need. We can run a careers carousel event, which we've done for the likes of Siemens, where Siemens will explicitly lay out the level with which the majority that they are looking for. And that won't suit every kid.
Yeah.
But then we're talking to, a partner at the moment. There are some businesses who will a big focus on social mobility. So getting young people, regardless of background, changing the circumstances with which they may be born into, whether they're academic or not. But there's a lot of kids just need to get into the world of work. They're not suited to an academic lifestyle, 15, 16, getting out there and getting into the world of work.
Because it might be a modern apprenticeship level as opposed to a graduate apprenticeship level.
Absolutely could be, and WildHearts are an accredited apprenticeship provider. We can do team leader. We run an apprenticeship in partnership with Coventry University. So we'll teach level 3 team leader, which is a brilliant qualification which has an access of entry into loads and loads of employers across the UK, with the Ministry of Defence to lots of the big government outsourcers. Team leader is an important qualification in, employers like fast food retail outlets or retail environments, all the shops that the kids go to when they're going shopping at the weekend. Team leader is a brilliant accreditation, whether it's taught by us or it's taught by others. You'll learn that actually something like that can help kids open doors very, very quickly. So we've got one particular partner who last year had 7,000 entry-level job vacancies in the UK. But they have a big focus on social mobility. They want kids who have, refugees or different backgrounds, asylum seekers, kids from low-income communities who don't often have the easy avenues into the world of work. They just want to open their doors to get some of these kids, in earning.
Provide an opportunity.
They'll do the training, they'll do the support once they're in, but provide that opportunity. So that's a key goal of whether it's teachers who engage with careers guidance in a school, or it's just a kind of subject level teacher showcasing, hey, did you know that applications are open for this company? And if you want to be a barista, you want to be a cleaner, you want to be in facilities, you want to be in maintenance, these are the places to go.
And it's a pathway that you can find out.
Do you want to be a mechanic? Do you want to be an engineer? Do you want, hands-on apprenticeships? Maybe you need to go to the car servicing companies of this world, or you want to go into the Ministry of Defence. There's loads of jobs there, but you sometimes do need to know where you should be focusing your skills on. And is it something like, the WildHearts Schools program that will teach essential skills? Maybe that's all you will need to get into an interview with several of these employers at the earliest opportunity you can. So towards that sort of February to May time, it's a lot of showcasing of CV writing, how you develop it, what subjects might be important for particular businesses, where are there portals available for applications.
And to be fair, at that time of year when a lot of these businesses are actually actively recruiting, that's something that schools are actively crying out for as well, to support young people. Where can they get more information about CV writing and how to sell themselves in the best way possible to open those doors for them?
And so lots of businesses want to provide that level of knowledge and information, but it's difficult for them to
get the engage, platform to
to engage with schools. They operate in very different environments, so you need organisations like yourselves, like DYW, Skills Development Scotland, to be the conduits to that. So a lot of it is about working together with employers, and we're in a unique position because we've got corporate partners who are supporting our schools programme directly. We sell lots of products and services to corporate companies,
which gets them invested in the process.
Gets them invested. We teach apprenticeships, as part of our suite of products and services we deliver. So it's just building these elements into a package that is open to anybody to engage with.
And it becomes a touch point when they can
pick what's relevant to them. So don't want anybody who's listening to this to feel like the whole programme, they have to invest themselves in the whole academic programme throughout the year.
Yeah, because that's worth re-emphasising. You've said really there's something for every point of the 10 months of a school academic year. However, there's actually so many different touch points that are open to that one individual to influence, or influence complete classrooms and teachers and a network of particular subjects as well.
And I'd encourage people to sort of dip their toe in the water, if you like. Make an inquiry, ask how they can get involved. One teacher may feel, I've only got a couple of hours in this academic term but that's a great starting point. Parents of teachers can be engaged with our programme. Again, I know it's not easy for mums and dads to take time off work, whatever, but they can come along to the marketplace at November the 13th at the COP hub that we're running there, and be engaged, understand what employers are looking for, support your kids. We can put you on tables with other kids. One of the big things we're doing this year is we're going to mix the school tables up.
And find out what's important to them as well.
Absolutely.
That's another way.
We held an event, it was interesting, we held an event we have a brilliant sport, the Glasgow Academy, and they have a brilliant auditorium. It's a small subset of the community who can afford to send their kids there, but they have a 200-seat auditorium that they allowed us to use for free, and we brought 20 different schools to that hub 3 years ago. But the young kids couldn't quite believe it was a school. We had kids who were in Scotland as a direct result of conflict, refugees and asylum seekers who just could not believe it was a school. But it really did change their thinking, in the sense they'd been to a different school, they'd met kids who, to be fair, kind of just like them.
All different backgrounds.
All different backgrounds, but are going through the same academic system, have got the same aspirations to try and change the circumstances within which they live. And it really opened their eyes that I think that people are broadly equal. They might have different resources, but humans are humans, and we've all got the same challenges, sometimes at different levels, but people want to be successful, have good relationships, have love in their life, and be supported to be the best that they can be. And it was great bringing those different communities and schools together, and values together, because it's often the same values, just operating and manifesting themselves in different ways. And the teachers are as passionate as ever. I mean, we've got some schools who've been involved in the Micro-Tyco program since year one.
For years.
Yeah. And it's the same teacher, a music teacher. I'll not embarrass her, but a music teacher, school in East Kilbride, who've been doing the schools program for over 10 years now, since its very first iteration.
And they just feel so passionate about it.
They know the opportunities it brings to the kids. There's other teachers that engage with it now. It's become an embedded part of their curriculum in the school, and certain year groups are going to be taking part in the schools program. And they do it every year, and they come out every single year, and they can just, as we put more resources into it ourselves and bring more of our corporate partners to the table, we are creating more opportunities for those really sort of long-term engaged teachers who see the value in it. But again,
getting involved.
Simple touch points. If it's just to come download the lesson plans, take 2 or 3 lesson plans that feel that might be relevant for a geography teacher or modern studies or a business teacher. Take it, run with it. Let us know how you're teaching it and delivering it and what you're doing with it, because that's all great feedback for what we know is working and what's not. Also, you can maybe
come back and build on it again, year one, year two, and keep it going. And
we've got a schools team there that's there to answer the inquiries, that's there to support. We try and support with logistics and engagement on the day. And as I say, the marketplace event that is there this year, that's bringing together the likes of Bernardo's, and they're talking about their outreach projects on the streets of Glasgow and Police Scotland, engaging in all of that. It gives, it could be young kids who are having a challenging time at home, feeling like they might have an outlet, whether that's through the programme or just meeting some of these employers and community-based organisations and realising that there's
actually good work going out.
Yeah, and there's a bigger world out there of people who care and want to support and want to just try and help folk get on.
So, Colin, obviously hearing all the ideas that WildHearts are obviously involved in is fantastic, but we just need to summarise, I guess, what's happening very soon locally at City of Glasgow College on the 13th of November. It's excellent to be able to get 20 schools at least involved in this project. So if you'd like to just summarise, how can schools and young people sign up to this?
Absolutely. The starting point is go to the website, which is wildheartsgroup.com/schools. Fill out the inquiry form, and our schools team will be in touch in terms of how we get you signed up for hopefully that event in person, if you can get your young pupils to the event on the day. There are workshops with our corporate partners, a series of learnings. It's fun, it's engaging, it's practical. Schools will meet other schools. We're going to mix up the kids on the tables this year so that they are engaged with kids they've never met before, and that's important for community relations, general engagement, confidence building. They'll learn all about what employers are doing in the space. The key themes for the programme this year is all about sustainability, so learning what companies think of sustainability, what it means in the world of work. Employability, so what essential skills do young people need in the modern workplace in order to get ahead? And our schools program will teach all sorts of skill sets if you can participate at whatever level is appropriate from a time and resource perspective. And visibility as well. So giving visibility to employers, what young people need to do to help them get into the world of work, pathways towards that. And we've got an amazing marketplace event on that day where wider community, Police Scotland, Bernardo's, other engagement communities, I think DYW are going to be there.
Yep, we're Skills going to be there.
Skills Development Scotland are going to be there, as well as all of our partners and other supporters, and our staff from our teams will all be there on the day to
answer questions and
to be a part of it. So going to the website or just you find us at wildheartsgroup.com/schools. Ping us an email, whoever you are, teacher, parent,
influencer,
a young pupil influencer. Just let us know who you are, and we will then get directly involved in that engagement process. It's been an absolute pleasure to come in here, chat to you about the programme that we're really passionate about. It's directly linked to all of the activity we do, and you can also get a wider understanding of who we are at WildHearts, all the products and services we sell. Where do we reach globally, not just through this programme, but some of our other impact work.
Yes.
We're really, really passionate about it, and we appreciate the opportunity to come and chat to you today.
Yeah, Colin, thanks very much for your time. Obviously, one of the things that we want to do is try and just spread the word, get more schools involved, exactly what you said. More teachers, more influencers, more parents, and fundamentally young people. Thanks for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Cheers.